All right, welcome back. So, wanted to talk a little bit about the A's and how they're doing after the trade deadline. Um, Playing really good baseball. I think they've won 3 of 4. Nah, might be 2-2, but they played the Padres. Padres are obviously one of the better teams in the league and lost the first one. Um, Really, it was just a story of what's been going on all season. Had plenty of runners on base, but couldn't get the big hit with runners in scoring position. I think we were 0 for 15 in that first game. Only run we scored was a Marte home run, solo shot. So we ended up losing 8-1, and it was basically just Padres were great with runners in scoring position, and we were not. And that's been a frustrating part of the season so far. we tend to get plenty of base runners on, whether via the walk or hits, whatever. But once they get in threatening, we've had bases loaded so many times this year, and I think we're batting like under 200 with bases
I
loaded.
feel ya.
So it's definitely frustrating when you see all those potential runs on and you come away with nothing. But that's more.
Especially when it's like 1 out.
Yeah. Well, we've
Drive you nuts.
We've had bases loaded with no outs this season and didn't score, so it's definitely frustrating. But um, one bright spot has been Yan Gomes. He's come up with 2 just clutch hits. One tied the game against the Padres, ended up making it go into extra innings, and then we won on a Matt Olson. Just missed a home run, ended up being a double off the wall, but both runs came in to give us the go-ahead walk-off win. So it's been great to see those additions make some big plays. Marte especially, I think he has 5 steals for us since he's been on the team, and that's 4 games, something like that. Gomes has had some clutch hits. Harrison's been on base quite a bit. And then Chafin, like I said, I touched on him already. He's been clutch out of that bullpen. So adding him was great to a struggling bullpen. Um, I was hoping we'd get Rich Rod or maybe just one more reliever to help out. But I feel pretty comfortable with what we have going forward, especially if Chafin can step in. He's a left-handed pitcher. We haven't really had a consistent one out of the pen this year because Diekman's been so off. So adding him was great. But I did want to mention one thing we didn't talk about in the trade deadline stuff. In our division, the Mariners traded away Kendall Graveman, which has been pretty much the best closer in the game this year. He's a former A's starter, converted to a reliever, and he had like a .82 ERA going into the trade deadline, and they traded him to an interdivision rival right after he just closed out a game against them. And it was disheartening to the Mariners team, to say the least. They won 3 out of 4 against the Astros, which lead the division, inching them even closer, and then the front office does that. So, as you could imagine, the clubhouse was very pissed off about this. A lot of guys were just screaming, just what, like even when we're winning, they don't want to support us. So I think the Tyler Anderson trade was actually in response to the feedback from the players. And look, I get it. Mariners aren't going to win the World Series. They're just not. But they are outplaying the sum of their roster, and there's something to be said for that. I think their run differential is something like -40 something. So that's not typically a winning strategy.
I would kill for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be happy to be south of 100.
Yeah. So you don't typically see teams with negative run differentials have a good record. They can definitely be around 500, but holy smokes, they're definitely outperforming that. I think they're 28-9 or something like that in one-run games. So that's not really something you can keep up over the course of a season. So I definitely get what the front office was doing, but at the same time, when you are having the season that you're having, it's not a good time to blow it up. But Anderson's a lot more long-term sort of thing. I think he's going to help him this year, and he's going to help him in the future for the next few years, where Graveman the way that he was pitching, they probably weren't going to be able to hold on to him because he's going to command top reliever money the way that he pitched this season. So I think if you zoom out a little bit, the move makes sense. But when they were having the season that they were having, what kind of message that sends the team is not good. So.
Well, yeah, you're gut punching all the fans at a high point. I mean it.
Yeah, I could see,
It
if they were struggling and the record's starting to come down, but literally
right.
beating the team that you're trying to catch up to 3 out of 4 times and then trading it your best reliever to them, that's definitely a nice kick in the nards.
And it's the Astros, man.
Yeah. Which, holy smokes, I don't know if you saw the Dodgers reception that they gave them in this last series. They threw a trash can on the field, booed the hell out of them. I don't blame them, but it is kind of getting old. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
I will never like the Astros because they're in our division, and we basically were directly affected by them cheating.
Right.
So I'm a little salty about it still, but I'm not going to go, boo them every time they have a hitter come to the plate, anything like that. So I get that the Dodgers haven't had a chance to do that yet, but hopefully we can be done with that going forward here.
It's definitely a tired narrative for sure, and especially this season after all the sticky stuff debate and Bauer, and I mean it's the Dodgers calling the kettle black to some degree. So
yeah, it's
it'll
definitely saying that the Astros were the only team cheating is not accurate. So
correct.
Anyway, other news, the Mets did not sign Rocker.
No.
Because of an apparent elbow MRI that they saw something that they didn't like. So they reneged I think they had a $6.5 million offer to him, and he wasn't going to negotiate down. So basically what this does is leaves him in a state of limbo where he can either return to Vanderbilt and not make, well, I guess he could make some money from the NIL stuff.
Yeah.
But you go from $6.5 million to maybe a couple $100,000 and potentially ruin your arm pitching in a meaningless season. So it sounds like what he's going to do is basically just train independently or wherever he's going to do it and get ready for the 2022 draft. Mets will receive the 11th pick next year, and I really hate this rule because basically the Mets, other than they don't get the player that they drafted, they get the pick to replace him. Well, what happens to him? He loses out on the money. He can't sign with another team, so he can't make money from them. Obviously, like I said, NIL, but there's a huge difference between what he was offered and what he could make through that. And it's either play amateur or wait till next year and train up. He's basically losing an entire year of his career because of this rule. And I think that needs to change because it is so, like, baseball has been so ass backwards when it comes to minor leaguers to begin with. Like, these guys are making $2,000 a month, barely surviving during the season, traveling on buses. Like, the conditions are so bad. And I don't know if you saw over the pandemic, they had the minor league camps where they basically had the teams that were playing against each other. Like, so your players from the A's organization would be playing against other A's players from the A's organization. They called it taxi squad. And what they were feeding these guys, like, I wouldn't feed my dog. And that's what they were trying to feed these guys, and they were getting away with it. So until someone aired it out, obviously they fixed it. But it's sad that it took someone saying, hey, I wouldn't feed this to my dog before they actually fixed the issue. So anyway, that's a whole different story. But baseball does not care about minor leaguers at all. And that's quite apparent with this rule specifically. Like, and I don't know, like, I can see the argument to the other side of it. If players didn't want to sign, they just hold out, and then they can go sign with whoever they want and make more money. So I don't know what the solution would be. I don't know if it would be if they don't, like, if they're not offered a contract from the team that drafted them, then they're a free agent. That probably makes more sense, because essentially he was offered a contract, but then they rescinded it, so it's like he wasn't offered a contract at all.
Right.
So that would give him the freedom to say, hey, here's my MRI. Here's the MRI from 2019 that shows the same, according to his agent. No new damage, anything like that. He's been pitching with the same arm for the last 2 years, no issues. What do you guys, what will you give me? And ultimately that's going to be the benefit of the player, and the team would still get their draft pick the following year. No loss of income or anything like that. So I think that needs to change. But one thing we did not talk about is your trip.
Oh, yeah. Before I dive into that, one thing about the whole rocker situation, I'll be honest. I hope the elbow shit gets cleared up, and I hope he's there at 4 or wherever we are.
Yeah.
I would be more than happy for them to spend a pick on him. So we'll see where that goes. But obviously I've already talked about my love for the city of Pittsburgh. I'm not going to get too wild on, the trip itself, but ate a lot of good food. I mean, city's absolutely beautiful. And I got to catch another Pirates game. The Pirates game was a blowout. It was an ugly game, but it doesn't matter. I love going to that stadium. PNC Park has to be my favorite stadium across any sport, it don't matter. It's just absolutely beautiful. But then I was also able to actually go to Steelers training camp, which it was a new experience for me. I never even thought about going to training camp. I mean, obviously I haven't been in a situation to, but it was fun. It was different. I mean, it's different this year also. They obviously have their training camp at another location most times, and they ended up having it at Heinz Field this year. So I'm a little bummed about that, because talking to people in the stands, it's definitely a different experience when you go and see them normally. But there's, they're not doing signings and things like that. There's not a ton of player interaction. They talk to the crowd and stuff like that, which was a lot of fun. I would say the best thing about training camp that I enjoyed is you really get to see the personalities come through. I absolutely had a blast watching Cam Hayward. I mean, they were doing punt drills with him. I mean, he caught like 6 or 7 balls before he dropped one. I mean, he was just. There were guys there that, were probably taking it serious, and he was just out there having a blast, just messing with people for 2.5 hours. Oh, yeah. He was, and I mean, he's a fan favorite, obviously, being a Pittsburgh fellow, but it was just fun. That's the kind of stuff that I really enjoyed. As far as some notes from training camp, obviously, I wanted to go see our draft picks really bad. Najee looks amazing in camp. He looked great in the game tonight for the Hall of Fame game, the little bit that he played. He's a downhill runner, runs hard. Obviously, we kind of know what we got with him. But I was really excited about Pat Freiermuth. Anybody who's listened before has heard me talk about him. I think him and Eric Ebron are going to be an awesome tight end tandem for the Steelers, and I think they'll be deadly once Ebron's healthy. But he was super impressive to me in camp, more so from the blocking standpoint. He's been amazing catching in camp, not just the one I went to, but through all of training camp. He's a stud. But seeing him with hands on other guys in blocking drills, I'm very excited about him being on the team. I've already been high on him, obviously, but super excited about him. But yeah, it was a different experience. It was really cool seeing players like that, actually being able to see them work through drills, and it was just a really good time. It was hot as hell. Sun was out that day, but other than that, it was absolutely amazing. Heinz Field's beautiful. I had a great time, and like I said, the Hall of Fame game tonight is kind of more of the same. There's a ton of players that obviously did not play, a ton of our starters. But some of our backups, Mason Rudolph struggled. I have a hard time believing he'll be our number 2 for much longer. Haskins came in, and even Dobbs. Dobbs looked really good when he was with Seattle a few years back, and they were really high on him. So I think both Haskins and Dobbs have more upside than Rudolph does. I think, honestly, he's held on to the second position solely based on where he was taken. I think that's slowly running out. I don't know that I see him staying. I mean, he's not going to last past his rookie contract, if even that long.
Yeah.
Haskins, I'm excited for, both on a team level, but also a personal level. I think the change of scenery is going to be really good for him. For whatever reasons, him and Ron Rivera didn't click in Washington. He was kind of over the Haskins project, and obviously they moved him out. He seems more comfortable. Seems like he's doing well. He moved the ball really well, and our defense looked good. So all in all, between the training camp and tonight's game, for what you can take from a preseason game, especially, I always laugh at the Hall of Fame game, but especially this game, it's the first one out the gate. Things are a little sloppy. Obviously, they got to get shored up. But, I mean, it's all positive things. And the last thing I would say about the Hall of Fame game is our starting line actually looked really, really solid.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
at the very beginning of the game.
Highsmith looked pretty impressive.
Yeah. And I don't know. That was really awesome because I think our O-line's going to be make or break for us. So to see those guys click in, and it's a short sampling, obviously, but they were clicking. They blocked well. I think it was a good first outing. I hope they build on it. So kind of capped off my trip. Yep.
Did he get hurt? I saw him go down pretty
No.
hard.
I'm pretty positive. I mean, he was jumping around, celebrating throughout the rest of the game for people. He basically, what he did is he laid out for that pass, and he took the ball right in the stomach.
Yeah,
it just knocked the wind out of him. No, I hear you. Initially, I was like, oh, man.
I was like, oh, that's why I hate preseason. But
yeah.
All right. Well, if that's all you have.
Yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful trip. I'm happy to be back. Obviously, plan on being more regular on here. Kind of threw a wrench as far as the podcast plans, but I'm back and refocused and dedicated to being on here.
Well, we're glad to have you back. But I actually got offered some camp tickets for this weekend. And it killed me to say no, but there's too much going on in the family stuff right now to try to pull that move off. So,
have you ever gone before?
Not to training camp, no. I've honestly only been to one Raiders game, and it was preseason. So obviously, I'm going to another preseason game coming up. Been to a couple games at Mile High or Invesco, whatever they call it now. I think I've been to like 3 regular season games there, but never seen the Raiders in regular season. So hoping to change that before too long. Should be a lot easier now that they're in Vegas. Only 2 hours away from me, 2.5, something like that. So, but no, I got offered those tickets because there's a lady I work with that has season tickets to the Raiders games now that they're here in Vegas. So,
That's awesome.
It killed me saying no, but they did make a couple moves I guess one possible move's coming up, but they did sign Gerald McCoy, which I don't know if you remember last preseason, he was with the Cowboys, and I think he was simulating an offensive lineman and tore his hamstring or something like that. He was out for the rest of the year.
This is the same Gerald McCoy that was with the Bucks back in the day, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Same guy. So anyway, he is. If he has something left in the tank, I'm happy that they signed him. But it's one of those low risk, somewhat high reward moves. So happy to see him at least kick the tires on him. And then we actually had KJ Wright, the linebacker from Seattle. He came and
Oh,
visited
he's a
today.
stud.
Yeah, that's a move I could definitely get behind. I mean, I'm pretty okay with the linebacking core we have right now. Everyone's down on Littleton because he's been a huge free agent bust, but I think it was more him trying to pick up a scheme that, quite honestly, no one really picked up because Gunther, I think, was changing it week to week on what he was calling and what he wanted everyone to do, and they were having a really hard time picking up his scheme because it was, 35 pages worth of just random shit, and every other defensive coordinator saying, "Here's your base. Here's what you're supposed to do." Obviously you got blitz packages and things like that, but it seemed like Gunther was, when he was teamed up with Zimmer, he was a great coordinator, but I'm wondering how much of it was Zimmer and how much of it was Gunther, because you've seen Zimmer continue to have success and Gunther really hasn't. Granted, Raiders roster wasn't the best, but if we could get KJ Wright, I'd be all for it. I don't know who would get the axe at that point, because really we have 4 linebackers that are really decent players, so we'll see what happens.
KJ, if you guys can pull him in, I mean, he's one of those unique linebackers. He is so strong in coverage.
Yep.
And there's guys that can fill in coverage, and they do okay, they do all right. He excels in coverage, and in today's league, that's a big ask from a linebacker. So that'd be crazy. And if you could get McCoy, if he returns to form at all, I mean, he was a stud. He put in some good years.
For sure.
So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean.
But to your point on coordinators, though, I mean, I kind of got to make the comment just because we have obviously new offensive coordinator with Canada. It just reminded me, I apologize, of Derek Watt. He's been one of our standouts in training camp, and amazing standouts out of the passing game, everything. And so that's been a lot of the debate was what was the problem before? Why wasn't he using him? I think he had 1 rush last year. And I'm a big fullback guy. I love tight ends. I love fullbacks. Those are some of my favorite positions. And
you'd love John Gruden.
Oh man, he does. But I think the fullbacks are not utilized enough in today's league. But I love seeing that, and I think Canada, I guess to your point, is I always wonder that also. I mean, you always hear people talk. Some coaches, they make the jump to obviously head coach, and it doesn't pan out. Some people are just coordinators.
Yeah.
And in his case, some people are coordinators in the right system.
Yep.
So I'm excited about how that. I think it's working out for us. I hope it translates, and I hope it's the same. Hope it's the same for you guys. I hope it. I mean, it's one thing, again, off season, training camp, preseason, but hopefully it translates to some regular season wins for you guys.
Well, and
it
KJ
sounds
Wright,
like you're willing to make some moves. So
he was in Gus Bradley's system back when they were the Legion of Boom, so definitely has a familiarity there, and that's why I thought it would be a lock for him to sign. But it sounds like he's got interest from probably 5 to 6 other teams. So
at least
he didn't want to, just sign on his first visit, but I still think Raiders have a good chance at bringing him in. And like I said, I still don't think they're done making moves because Jalen Richard's eaten up $3.5 million as a third-string running back. I don't see that, sticking around, especially when you can get someone like John and I talked about, Adrian Peterson.
I was just going to ask you about him.
Yeah.
Because I heard you guys talk about him a bit. realistic do you think that is?
I don't know. Like, for him, it doesn't make sense if he wants to have a huge role, because obviously Josh Jacobs and Ken Drake are in front of him on the depth chart. But having a guy like that can just bruise, and really he can do anything. He can, short of catching the ball out of
I
the
mean,
backfield, that's not a strength. But if you're
here's
just handing the
Adrian
ball,
Peterson.
yeah, if you're handing him the ball, he's going to get it done. So I don't know how realistic it is, because I don't know how bad the other teams are kicking tires on him. But as we get closer to the end of training camp, I mean, you pretty much have to bring someone in if you're going to. Otherwise, it's cutting into the regular season. So I think we'll see something before too long. But if we could get KJ Wright and Adrian Peterson by cutting Jalen Richard,
Do
I'd
it.
do it yesterday. So, but yeah, no, I think that's all I had with the Raiders. Um, there was something else that popped up while you were talking, and I forgot to write it down. So if it comes back up while you're talking about something else, I'll mention it. But for now, it's your turn, big fella.
All right. I mean, for anyone that's listened, obviously knows I'm big on hockey, so I gotta insert a little bit when I can. But this one actually really hits me in my feels. So obviously, Marc Andre Fluery is near and dear to the hearts of basically every Penguins fan on the planet. Um, I'm still just traumatized that we ever let him leave. Um, but anyways, obviously went to Vegas. I mean, he's done very well. Um, Amazing, you might say. It was really surprising to me to even hear that this move happened, but they traded him to the Blackhawks. That in and of itself, I hate that he went to I hate that he went to Chicago, but to then find out that the poor man found out through Twitter. These are the kind of things where, yes, a franchise is a business and they do their thing, blah blah blah. This is where that human element will always drive me nuts. That some organizations can be so inconsiderate to it. For him, someone who was a staple in Vegas' success. I mean, not just as a Penguin, he's been successful his whole career. He was crucial to their playoff runs. You know, I mean, he basically helped put Vegas on the map in their inaugural seasons. You know, he's a big part of, you know, what they've built. And that's fine. You trade a player, those things happen. But for him to find out on Twitter absolutely infuriates me, obviously, because I love the man. But I was always holding out hope he'd find his way back to Pittsburgh at some point. But the stand-up fella that he is, he very easily could have told Chicago, "Look, I'm not reporting. I'm not signing the trade," basically. And that would have opened up the door for him to come to Pittsburgh. But, and I mean, I don't even know that would have been in the cards, but it would have opened up that possibility. But that's just not the way the Flower is. He's a stand-up dude. And I knew he was going to do it. There were so many people I saw that were hopeful that we could get him, but I knew he was going to contact him and be like, "I'm reporting. Let's do this." He's just that kind of player. I guess all I really have to say on it is it's just I'm so tired. And you hear about a few of these every year in every league, somewhere, somehow. This is how they find out.
Yep.
And I get the business side of it. I get making these things happen, and sometimes leaks happen, whatever. I get it. But this should never happen to a player, and especially not a player with the impact he has. Vegas wouldn't be the franchise they are right now, you know, after the expansion without Fleury between the pipes. So I think he was done a huge disservice, and he's going to take it off the chin and he's going to be fine. He's not the kind of person that's going to hold a grudge like that. He's an absolutely amazing human being, not just a player. So he's going to show up for Chicago, and he's going to play great. It's an amazing pickup for them. It still bugs me. Obviously, Penguins having goalie trouble. I hate seeing him go anywhere else, but that's not even the main point. It's just that human element should never get sidestepped for business, in my opinion. It's just not how it should be done.
And
so
now you can join me in my hate for the Las Vegas Knights. Golden
yeah,
Knights.
I'm officially never going to root for them again.
Yeah.
No, I just don't know how you do that to somebody.
Well,
like
and I guess
Fluery.
So A's also didn't alert Jesus Luzardo when they traded him. He found out on Twitter. So that leads me to believe there was probably some, I don't know, I don't want to say animosity, but probably loss of respect for the player. And like you said, that shouldn't be how they find out about it. But
no, and I will say to that, I mean, if there's a bad relationship between the franchise and the player, not saying this is Luzardo. I mean, I know he had his incident and maybe that stuff, but if you have a cancer in the locker room, things like that, and it's just known, whatever, maybe then I could understand a franchise being like,
yeah,
whatever, see you later. But that's not Flower, obviously.
Yeah. Well, and like Braden and others in the organization, they say we are going to miss him. We wish him the best, all that stuff. So it leads me to believe that he probably wasn't, a locker room cancer or anything like that. I just wonder if the front office had it with him. And, it is unfortunate. I wish that wouldn't have happened, but it did. So thought, if just to be fair and not a complete homer, I ought to mention that. So.
Well, and it happened. I'm sure every team's done it at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you hear about it every year. So, I mean, there's a handful that happen every year. It just, your heart breaks for these players because, especially the really good ones, the high character guys that, I mean, it's just such a gut punch, but.
It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, he was in the minor leagues at the time, so it's not like he was there in the building. Makes it a little more difficult. But, like, every time you see a trade go through, like, when they have cameras or whatever, it's always, hey, come into the office. I got to talk to you about something. Hey, you've been traded, whatever. Here's where you're going. Thanks for your time. This person will coordinate your travel, whatever. Good luck. That's always how I've seen it done. So where he was in Vegas, obviously that's not where the A's are headquartered out of. So maybe that played into some of it. Maybe the trade got out to a member of the media or whatever, and they just pushed the trade through. I don't know, but it is what it is. So I don't remember what I was going to bring up outside of that. So I guess we'll let you off the hook. But this one, we might even have to split this baby into two parts because we went a little wild on this one.
Well, it was a pretty big topic. This was an active trade deadline, man.
Yeah.
So we probably could have talked about that for an entire episode.
Yeah. Well, and I had some jerk not left for training camp. Probably would have, but it's fine. I'm glad you had a good time.
Jerk here.
All right. So with that, we'll end here, and like I said, maybe split it out into two. We'll see what we do. But as always, we have the socials now at SSSPod21 on Twitter and Instagram, and then Facebook we're at Square State Podcast. No, Square State Sandlot. Yep. And then you can find us on YouTube as well, which is we'll post a lot of clips. We'll post the entire episodes in a couple places so you can see them. As always, leave any comments, questions. We'd love to do a mailbag for questions from fans. Get you guys involved in that. As Kyle's hinted, we will be doing fantasy football. Maybe get some of the fans in on it. I always do prizes in fantasy football, so maybe a little incentive to join there. But anything else you need to add before we call it?
That's it, man. I'm just excited. Obviously, the rebranding and getting in under the new flagship podcast, whatever. I don't know. It's exciting. I'm having a blast. So I hope people get involved.
Oh,
looking forward to answer some questions.
And shout out to my aunt Michelle Livermore for making
Yes,
the design for us. We love it. So
it's absolutely amazing. Thank you.
all right, and with that, we'll end here. So you guys have a good evening. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you on the next one.
Have a good one.